Welcome one and all, it's time for yet another Warhammer the Age of Sigmar tournament report, Realms 9 from the TSN Arena in Nottingham. Tornus the Redeemed, freshly painted, ready to lead the Stormcast Eternals forces into battle, and the theme of this army that I've put together here is looking at the units that are most highly rated by the community and by the various YouTube outlets that do their tier lists, and picking only units that are at the top or near the top and trying to make some kind of cohesive list out of it and see how that does. So let's dive in, shall we? There is the entire army, and it's a packed house in the chat already this evening, as I can see. I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to do this video because the internet has been down in this house, and it only just came back on an hour or so ago. So if I disappear at any point, then that'll be why, but it should be okay, in theory. So who have we got in there? We've got Dark, we've got John, Optimus, and we've got Super Duper Happy Time. When did I start doing AoS content? Well, if that's a surprise to you, you must be new to this channel, because I've been doing AoS content maybe longer than anyone else. Because the first episode of the Andy and Rem show, which was speculating on pre-Age of Sigmar, before we even knew what it was, that was at least a month or two before we saw anything announced for the game system. I've been doing Age of Sigmar content a long time. Okay, Optimus is hoping for a podium finish. Well, I have been finishing on the podium for the coolest army voting at the last few events. And Dark says, have you played against the new Cities of Sigmar? No, there were some Cities of Sigmar at this event, but there were no new cog forts here, which are obviously going to be game-changing. And this is perhaps going to be one of the last tournaments to take place before we get things shaken up by the new General's Handbook, which is going to make things a bit more wild and enraged pretty soon. So, let's have a look at my list. We've got Tornus the Redeemed. So he's only 150 points and he unlocks everything, so those are the positives. He's also pretty good at fighting as well, and he can make the enemy slightly worse at fighting, which is nice. And in his regiment we have got, let's find the Knight Judicator. Where is he hiding? Well, we're going to have to go back to the wide shot for that one. There's the Knight Judicator with the Gryph-hounds for some shooting support. We've got 3 prosecutors also in this regiment, and we've got reinforced Vanguard Paladors with Starstrike Javelins, so 6 of them. We've got reinforced Long Strike Crossbows right there, so that is the General's regiment. And then the next regiment, we've got the Knight Relictor, who's sitting up there on the portal, with the Beacon of Azir and Intense Piety. We have got the Quest of Soulsworn, we've got reinforced Vanquishers, and we've got 5 Vigilors. So, all these units are particularly highly rated by the community at the moment. There are other units up there as well, but all these are pretty well regarded. And this is my attempt to make a strong list that synergizes well. So, if we look at, for example, Vigilors, giving units +1 to hit against an enemy unit for the rest of the turn, who benefits a lot from that? A unit that wants to attack them in multiple phases, perhaps, so the Paladors can attack in 3 different phases, so they're getting multiples of that bonus over the turn, so we've got some synergy there. So we've got lots of Rend 1 damage coming in there, and from the Prosecutors. But then we've also got Rend 2, we've got the Knight Judicator, the Long Strikes, Tornus, the Vanquishers, if they go into infantry, go up to Rend 2 as well. So we have got some good Rend available. We've got some good survivability from the Questors and the Paladors and the Vanquishers. A decent amount of wounds among them. And the Knight Relictor with the upgrades is going to be able to get back to life once per game, potentially on a 3-up, and also do once per game auto prayer, which is going to teleport someone to safety, which is very likely to be either Paladors or maybe Long Strikes, anyone that wants to drop or charge in near the enemy, and then for the retaliation that's coming back, they don't want to be there. So quite likely that you'll see Long Strikes being teleported away if the opportunity arises. They also have their own potential for some teleporting because I'm using the Vanguard Wing list, which means that one of the Vanguard units can teleport. Let's see what we've got. Super Duper says, I'm an Ancient Watcher back when you were doing a ton of Kings of War stuff. Yes, I've been doing Kings of War even longer than Age of Sigmar. What was I doing first of all on the channel, other than just Warhammer Fantasy? Probably Relics I was doing back at the start as well. Very old stuff, maybe Drop Zone Commander. Ancient times. Tobler says, why did you pick Intense Piety? Legendary Tenacity seems to be the better go-to trait for the Relictor. My thinking is, because I'm quite often going to be coming up against the Intercept and Recover, and I'm quite likely to want to put some treasure on the Knight Relictor because he's really good at escaping with his ability to teleport around the place. And sometimes I want to put him in harm's way because he'll want to get near the enemy so he can teleport other units away, and also so he can apply his -1 ward save debuff to the enemy. He has to get quite close for that. So if there is treasure on him, I'll be less worried about getting him attacked briefly. So if he has a 2/3 chance to survive one round of attacks and then teleport away the next turn, then that's my thinking there. And any other thoughts on the list in general before we start? The Vanquisher's obviously good against large units. The Paladors are also pretty good at that with lots of attacks. So if we come up against hordes of Skaven or something. Prosecutor's good for their precision strikes. With their 3 dice charge, they can go extra far on the charge and get in amongst the enemy lines. In terms of bringing one unit back at half strength at some point during the game when it's died, we've got lots of options for that. The Paladors and the Long Strikes would be obvious ones because they're expensive, so you get better value for them, and Long Strikes can drop in and immediately be impactful and shoot people, but also the Prosecutors, 2 of them dropping in near the end of the game if you need someone to charge a unit that's hiding on an objective, for example, and you need to guarantee that you make that charge so you can steal an objective at the end. They're not a bad choice. Even Vanquishers, 5 of them coming back is not terrible. 3 Questors coming back can still benefit from their quest-marked objective. So we've got lots of units that are competing for that spot, so whoever gets killed, there's going to be some value to be had in bringing most of them back to life, I think. Okay, so let's have a look at their faces and their lovely eyes. Maybe we don't want to look too closely at the eyes. That guy's quite angry, as you can see. And, oh, actually, here's an interesting thing. Look, you can see the hair has broken off this Vanquisher. It has been stuck back on now, though. But it did fall off during one of the games on day 1. As did the top of this banner, actually, so that's been stuck back on as well. That is the worst connection point, maybe, on any miniature I've ever seen. Definitely from GW, I think. Because you've got this big, heavy banner, and just that tiny little bit there. All you had to do was have it slightly lower and have the flag rest on his shoulder, which is what they do with the... What's the name of the hero that has the even larger banner? That's like resting across both of his shoulders. So they obviously understand that's a problem that exists, but they don't care. Look at that. Terrible. Okay, so into round 1. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention my battle tactics, did I? So my battle tactics are Restless Energy and Intercept and Recover. So, Restless Energy involves taking objectives off your opponent and then holding objectives in enemy territory, which is quite easy, I think, for the Stormcast, especially with a shooting list, because the enemy are going to want to come towards you, and if they leave anything at the back, that's less things coming towards your shooting. If they don't leave anything at the back, then you can just drop onto those objectives and start scoring things. And Intercept and Recover is... I've got the tools to take out specific units, I think. And the kind of thing that you would want to put treasure on and hide, I would be quite happy if I just don't have to deal with them. Any kind of big scary monsters that want to have treasure put on them and then just hide behind all the rest of their troops and I just don't have to fight them, I would accept that and just not get that treasure, or maybe right at the end. And the only potential issue going in that I'm thinking is that I'll be looking for double turns, obviously, with Long Strikes and Paladors that can retreat and charge and all that good stuff, so we can get multiple hits in with the powerful units, turns in a row. So if you take a double, though, some of the treasure can be deleted. But if you get in a double with this army, it's usually good night to some very important enemy units anyway. So I wouldn't have an issue with that. Nobler says, seeing your long strikes is playing 2 40mm bases viable. Oh yeah, so I did actually explain this to my opponents, because when I built them, they were built as just champions, rather than taking a reinforced unit, because when I was building the second unit of them, I think it was the done thing to have 2 small units of them rather than a reinforced unit. But now that having a reinforced unit is actually viable, all I say to my opponent is, look, this guy here at the back with the Blackbird, he's supposed to be on a bigger base, so if someone dies, I'll take him off first, and I always put him in this position in the formation you'll see in the pictures. So if anyone wanted to attack the unit from behind, then I would, as long as I remember, I would say, look, his base is supposed to be a bit longer, because GW are so lame that they thought it was a good idea to have the champion on a smaller base than the regular guys. So I just generally put him at the back, because that way he's not getting like an artificial frontage. The front of his base is in the right place for measuring the shooting range, and this guy is the champion, so he should be on a smaller base anyway. And if someone dies, he goes first. Otherwise, I could just get a blank base and just blue tack him on top of it, I suppose. Okay, life cycle. The way this one works is in round 2, one of these objectives is chosen to be the primary objective, and then it cycles its way around in a clockwise manner for the rest of the game, and that's worth more points. And then the 2 secondary objectives, which are the ones next to it, are also worth some juicy points to you. In the first round, you just get more points if you hold the 2 in the middle. And what are we up against? Iron Jaws with Kragnos. The old Cragmeister out to play. Let's have a look what we've got. I'll pull up that list now and take a little sip of this beverage I've got sitting here. So, Auric Warclans, Iron Jaws Brawl. 2 drops, the same as me, so it is going to be impactful who gets to put something down first. There is the Gorka Morka Manifestation Law. Intercept and Recover, Restless Energy, same as me, very straightforward. The General's Regiment, we have got Kragnos. He is 580 points of Terror, but he's not a unit that ever concerns me. He concerns me with the way he allows other units to have a 3-dice charge. That's strong. But the actual Kragnos model itself does not concern me as a unit, because I think Stormcast have pretty good tools for dealing with kind of mid-wound count monsters. Not necessarily Mega Gargants, because a unit of Long Strikes isn't going to drop in and kill one of those in one go. However, a unit of Long Strikes could drop in and kill Kragnos in one go. That's definitely a thing that could happen. And if they don't get the job done, then we've also got like the Knight Judicator, lots of other shooting attacks that can target him as well. And then we've got units that can cover a vast distance to get possibly through screens or around screens that could get to him to finish him off as well. So I think someone like Kragnos is in big danger against my list, so I'm not overly concerned about him. More concerned about him allowing these other units to charge into me. And we'll see their deployment and how protected Kragnos is, and how I can go about cracking any kind of castle that's built up here. What else have we got in Kragnos' regiment? We've got 3 units that are reinforced, 2 Brute Ragers units, and 1 Brutes unit. The Brutes are these guys, and the Ragers are the ones with the big chain-style weapons, I think. The angry-looking ones that are wearing less armour and have less in the unit, which is why they are significantly cheaper in points than the regular Brutes, which are these ones. But they're all very scary. And there is also a... Where's the other character? There's a wizard at the back there. So that's the Weird Knob Shaman with the Amberbone Whetstone and an eye for Defight upgrades with a reinforced unit of Brutes. So we've got 2 reinforced Brutes units. And there's the Scourge of Gairan Weird Brute Wreckers, which I think are actually this unit here with the, yeah, these the actual chains, the ones that are mildly chain-like over there, I think are the Ragers. I'm sure someone will let me know if I'm wrong here. Or are they Ragers and they Anvil Smasher? No, that's Anvil Smasher is, that'll be this guy then, won't it? Another character in there by the looks of it. So we've just got lots of hard-hitting stuff. We've got the faction terrain, the tower there. There's going to be wargs called. There's going to be turns where the enemy are specifically more powerful. And it's just terrifying big blobs of wounds that can do some serious damage back. So let's have a look at my layouts that I've gone for here. So I've picked my quest marked objective to be the one in the enemy territory there. Some of the maps just don't give you a choice. If you look at this one, this is actually the only objective that's not touching friendly territory, so you have to choose this one as the quest marked objective. So I've gone for that one. And the quest door's starting off near the portal and near the Knight Relictor, so they don't have to use their own teleport to get to it, so they can save that for later if they want to escape or teleport somewhere else. The Palador's hanging back, Tornus the Redeemed hanging out with them, so he seems like the kind of guy that wants to charge in with something like the Paladors, because that'll make them even more survivable if he's putting -1 to hit onto enemy units as the Paladors are fighting them. Vanquishers hanging out over here, they're mainly going to go and try and get onto that objective. Prosecutors are in range of the portal and the Knight Relictor as well, so they can get teleported into the action when it's required. It's important to consider, because you don't move them on the turn that you're going to teleport them, they have to have been there already. So you want to keep things near your teleportation sources, so you can zap them into position in the hero phase in the case of the priest, or in the movement phase in the case of the portal here. So it's a bit of a castle, Kragnos in the centre. I would much rather Kragnos was just standing up at the front so I could drop everything in and shoot him to death and then deal with everyone else later. But we'll see who gets first turn though, because that's going to be important. We both really don't want to go first. My opponent doesn't want to spread out and leave himself exposed, and I don't want to risk being doubled by all this lot. Look at those cinematic shots there over the shoulders of the Paladors with their javelins ready to go. And I am thrust into the position of taking the first turn, so my opponent won the roll-off. You can see Tornus the Redeemed is just hanging back. Oh yeah, and I've put the enemy's treasure onto my priest, onto the questors, and onto the vanquishers, who are not planning to go near the enemy much. The Paladors have gone through the portal, and they are hanging out up in the top left here on this objective. And you'll see why, because there's not much of the enemy that can threaten them. Even with the 3d6 charge from Kragnos, with a redeploy, they would be lucky to get either of those units into me. And with the potential 20-inch move, and then still a shoot and a charge from the Paladors, you're not really safe from them wherever you are. So I've just put them on an objective, and not too worried about scoring big points at this early stage, just trying to tempt the enemy out, and then picking where I'm going to strike, because I want to hit things and not take any punishment back, basically. So if anything's left out hanging on its own, I would like to hit and run against that specific unit, get out of there and be safe. Let's see. Total Man says you can move run unit into portal range. Yes. If I didn't make that clear, by the way, you want to have a unit like the prosecutors here. They're clearly not next to the portal, but they're within range so that they could move to wholly within 6 of the portal. If I didn't make that clear. So you want to put units into a position where they can move to wholly within 6 of it in the movement phase to allow yourself to be zapped somewhere. So that's it. Not very aggressive turn 1, because I don't feel like just splatting into one of these orc units and then my opponent goes and then maybe gets a double turn and I've just got units hanging out in the open exposed. Because even if I managed to, for example, the Paladors, if I threw them into this unit here, killed a load of them, powered through and got away, put my Relictor down here, and then teleported them to the other side of the table if on the enemy next turn, they can get some good runs in, get right up here, and then they could get a double turn and get right into the meat. So I don't want to be dropping everything down yet and committing. I'm just holding back, waiting to see how the enemy proceed. I've still got all my shooting units waiting in the sky, not going to get punched in the face before they've done their shooting. 4 points for me, turn 1 for the enemy. So this unit of brutes has got the crit mortals on it, very handy little token there. And these ones have got crit 2 hits, so they are going to hit very hard, both of these. I've been generating prayer points with my priest, and he's up to 9 at the moment. And the enemy treasure is on the 2 brutes units at the front and this fella at the back there. I would have thought that because Kragnos, there's so much effort being put into protecting Kragnos, maybe some of the treasure could have gone on him, but then maybe my opponent is doubling down on the I don't want you to kill Kragnos strategy. Not only is he hiding, he's also not got treasure on him, which is going to possibly tempt me to kill other less important units and not worry about him so much. So is that all your eggs in the Kragnos basket, though? Dark says, have you tried Stormstrike Paladors? I never see you play Vanguard ones. I've got a few because I like the models, but I haven't played them yet. I have not really tried the Stormstrike ones, but I am braced for the moment that Vanguard Paladors disappear and are moved to Legends. And that's why I've only superglued them onto their bases, so that if that does happen, then I can just stick them onto the slightly different shaped bases that the Stormstrike Paladors have and just use them as Stormstrike Paladors. But I haven't tried them as those yet because they just don't seem as good as the Vanguard ones at the moment. So, very cagey opening. My opponent is just spread out onto a couple of objectives, but not really spreading out in a way that I can take advantage of to get to Kragnos. And my opponent has taken a slight lead, so I get to decide where the primary objective is going to start. So it would make sense to start it here, because I'm already there, but then next turn it would go here and here, which are kind of enemy territory at the moment. So if I started it there, I would be giving up a turn of the enemy having it, and then it moves down here. But I'm not sure about that, because it would give the enemy a chance to kind of chase after it and follow it round the table. As it is, if it starts here and I'm on it, I kind of get the opportunity to follow it round the table. So I am going first in the next round. And I believe my opponent won the priority and gave it to me, because I wouldn't have taken it, because I think without my shooting units down, I don't have enough that's vulnerable. Because if my opponent took the turn, took the double turn, for one, some of the treasure would have got deleted, and I could teleport one of my units away with my priest, who is sitting on 9 prayer points and still has an automatic prayer anyway if I just wanted to super guarantee it. I don't think the position they're in a great spot to strike at me, so if I'd won the roll, I would have just given them the turn anyway. So they could have still done tactics, but I don't think they would have got much accomplished, and they would have pretty much had to continue being cagey, maybe spread out a little bit more, try and get more manifestations up to block out my teleports. But I end up with the turn, and I decide, actually, I'm going to throw a bit into combat now. Because if we look at this, Kragnos is really far away right now. So, and they've spread out enough so that if we're going to continue with this turn order, which is fairly likely, it's entirely possible we could continue going with me just going first and not getting any double turns. And I'm going to have to hit the enemy eventually, because they're on 2 objectives. If I want to get on 2 objectives, in the enemy next turn, I'm going to be in a position where they can actually hit me with something, potentially. So I'm going to try and hit here, which is a spot where there's not going to be that much pain coming back. Counter charges are going to be minimal because this unit's quite far away from this edge. They'd have a very difficult time. Kragnos wouldn't be able to get in either, there's no space, and it would be quite congested here, so I don't think there'd be as much of a hit back. And if I drop in some shooting around here, put the Paladors in, and then maybe get them out again with a power through and blockade the area so it's only the Paladors being hit, which protects any little shooting battery I've brought down here, which is going to be a common strategy I use with this list. Bring down the shooting and use retreating Paladors to blockade the enemy from getting to the shooting stuff. So, Tornus goes up just to shoot at this unit a bit, but he's not too interested in fighting. The Paladors have moved up here, and you can see we've done some serious damage to these 2 Orc units there. The long strikes have dropped down behind them, and moved into a position to avoid the enemy getting into the long strikes. And I've also got the priest here, and I'm planning to potentially teleport away some of these units. That's dead orcs up there, so don't worry, that's not a unit. My quest doors have popped up over here. They stepped into the portal, and I think they attempted a charge down here. They decided not to go for the enemy faction terrain yet, though. They're just hanging back a little bit. So if the enemy want to come and get me, they're going through the Paladors. You can see I brought down the Vigilors as well, so I was able to shoot up those 2 units and put +1 to hit on them. So I was able to then throw the Paladors into combat. And here they go. So what we see here is the shooting damage. So into combat we go. And actually I did send the Questors in, but instead of sending them into... What I was thinking of doing was sending them around this side and like punching the wizard, but I decided that would be too close to Kragnos. So instead of risking that, because there's a manifestation here that was put there after I had... Maybe it was after I teleported them. Maybe I did them with the priest and then put the priest through the portal. So then this appeared after I'd put them down, which meant that charge wasn't possible. So I decided to just charge this just to get them onto the objective, so they could get their ward save. And then when we get into combat, the Paladors murder a lot of stuff. And I actually decide, because these units are still alive, and because this manifestation is still here, I actually don't need to retreat them back, which was the original goal. So I decided I'm just going to leave them here, because this area is already nicely blocked. And it's only the Vigilors that are under any threat from another unit. And if this unit of Brutes wants to go around and fight Vigilors, that is probably not going to go too well for them, because that means there's only this slot up here fighting the Questors and the Paladors. Because they really want... That's the most dangerous unit probably there, other than Kragnos. And I don't see how he's going to get in along with everyone else. It's going to be very tricky for him. So you can see massive damage from the shooting, got into combat, decided I didn't need to power through at the end into the blockade position. But the plan was to power through and form the blockade again afterwards. But because both these units are still there and this manifestation is still there, if I'd killed it, maybe I would have done, because it's less congested, more space for Kragnos to get in. So 15-point turn there, because I took an objective off the enemy. Restless energy scored. Turn 2 for the enemy, and I'm just going to take a sip of this drink here. So you can see the Iron Jaws are keeping their buffs on. We've got crit mortals on this unit, which is very scary if they get in there. Mortal wounds are something Stormcast do not like to face at all. Crit 2 hits onto this unit with the chains here. And at this stage, would you be terrified to throw Kragnos in? Because if he gets in, if he ends up the closest unit, well, you definitely wouldn't do that. You wouldn't want him to eat a covering fire from the long strikes, so you'd make sure someone else would be closer. You get him in, you maybe, even if you kill all the Paladors, Questors might still be there. And then next turn, you're going to eat my entire army's shooting output. And you maybe have other units dropping in to fight you as well. So I can see why Kragnos is concerned, but he is also a hard-hitting beast, and he should be trying to kill things. So with covering fire, I actually finish off this unit, because they do end up being the closest, so all 3 of them are now dead. Which is a treasure unit as well, so I'll be scoring that next time. These guys do get in on the Questors, who are still kind of blockaded by this terrain. The big unit of Brutes get into the Paladors, and Kragnos is not going in. You can see, because I had such a vast roll on my, or a vast amount of prayer points built up, and then when I translocated the Questors, I rolled sufficiently high that they're also -1 to be hit for the entire battle round, so that's going to make them even more survivable. And they've also got all that defense used on them there. You can see, though, a couple of them have died, which is no surprise because it's a very hard-hitting orc unit there. And all the Paladors get whomped to death. And the manifestation does go down as well there. So, this is the situation now. Palador's gone, but 3 of them could come back. We've killed a fair number of orcs. But it's not so much about just trading point for point, because that actually doesn't look that impressive. That unit doesn't exist, by the way, they're all dead. It's not wildly one-sided point for point, but in terms of territory and the kind of position we've got the enemy in here, they're pinned down and all my ranged weapons are pointing at them. We've also got Tornus the Redeemed down here ready to go and strike at something. There's a treasure-carrying hero there who's potentially a juicy target for someone. 4 points only for the enemy there. Wasn't able to accomplish much. The quest doors are worth a lot on this objective, by the way, because it's their quest march objective, so they get +3 to their control score. So they're actually still holding this with only 4 of them. And the enemy decide to take the double turn. So there's going to be no battle tactics, but can they land a decisive blow? I'm not as concerned as I could be here by this double turn, because Kragnos is all the way up here. What's he going to do? He's not going to be able to join in, really. And these units are both pinned in by the quest doors, so I'm not sure they're going to be able to do as much damage as they would like here. I do understand taking the double turn, though, because if you don't take it, I think pretty much all this gets deleted by all my shooting and whatever else I can drop in. So I do fully understand taking it. It's more out of necessity, though, rather than it being a game-winning manoeuvre. So, this is now the primary objective as well. The long strikes use a bit of covering fire again, and not a huge map damage though. They whittle down a little bit of damage onto the orcs there. And, or did I do that yet? Maybe not. I think this is just me teleporting them. So I used the relics to teleport them from here down to here. And the reason for that is, I believe there's some way... Hold on, what's going on? Oh, I remember. There is a unit, they're maybe not visible in the photo, that's come back up here, I think. Is there a unit of 3 orcs, maybe, that's lurking up there? I think you can just see something poking out behind that building, maybe. Maybe we'll get a better picture. But I think there's a few orcs that have come up over here, and I didn't want the long strikes to be charged by them. And it happened in the hero phase, so I still had the chance to teleport them down here. So they're still in position to fight and shoot, because they're not really trying to escape as such. They just don't want to be charged by that one specific unit, because no one else can really charge them anyway. And you can see now that the enemy have got things stuck into the quest doors and have whittled them down to 1. So I'm still holding on to the treasure with the quest doors, and I've still got their teleport to escape as well. So we've got a big ball of death there, and I've lost most of 2 of my tough units. Only took 7-point hits that turn though. And you can see this guy's got into the Knight Judicator as well. Into my turn 3. So, the prosecutors teleport into the action. We've got 3 fresh Paladors dropping in 9 inches away from this guy, and Tornus the Redeemed is going to get him as well. We want to get his treasure because he's out all there on his own. No one to protect him. And then all my shooting just takes aim squarely at all these orcs here to do as much damage to them as possible. And you can see I've got my priest here to teleport the long strikes somewhere safe afterwards, or teleport himself somewhere safe afterwards as well. You can see that orc unit there, the 3 of them, they've just popped up into the camera shot now. So I get the Paladors and Tornus into combat there. I decide, because they both got in, I didn't need the prosecutors because they would just get killed by anything else really, so I'm just going to preserve them now. And the enemy are surrounded. They can get into the meaty portion of my army here, but the long strike's probably not going to be there. And if they are, then the relictor isn't going to be there, and the long strikes will covering fire at you when you come this way, and how much of you is going to be left? And there's still the vanquishers here that can fight quite well, and this is quite a dangerous area as well. So if it just came down to a straight up fight from this point on, I think the enemy would have a decent chance, because Kragnos is still there and he hasn't done anything yet. So we'll see. But in terms of scoring, you'll see it's massively in my favour now, because I've scored the other treasure and I get a 13-point turn there. So it's definitely going towards me at the moment. And then after that, you can see that I think I actually took the double turn there. Yeah, I just didn't take a picture of it. So I took the double turn because if we go back, I think with me taking the turn here, I just kill everyone that isn't named Kragnos and I just win. Just kill all this lot, get onto all the objectives. Kragnos can only go and chase down one thing a turn, and there's just nothing my opponent can do about it because I've already built up a lead. So I take the double, kill everyone that isn't Kragnos. There's one guy still alive there, those guys up there, and Kragnos alive, and that's it. And my Questor teleported away onto this objective as well. And this is now the primary. So, 9 points, and I think it's pretty much settled now. The Orcs do get a decent scoring turn there, as Kragnos gets onto the primary objective. And that also, I believe, sets off a bit of battle tactic, which is why there's so many points available there. And then, turn 5, I do decide I'm going to try and kill Kragnos. I just cover all the objectives, and then try and murder Kragnos. But I do hold all the objectives in enemy territory, though. So, 20-point round. Because... hold on, is that right? Should that have been 20-point round? Because that would mean I got the other treasure. Surely if I took a double... did I actually take a double, or did I just lie a minute ago? Let me go back. So I think if I'd taken a double... yeah, because that was definitely my turn there. When all these got in. So I think I did take a double. So the other treasure would have got deleted. Or had I just already scored it all? No, because then it wouldn't have been 20 points at the end. So yeah, maybe I should have had less points there at the end. But it didn't make much of a difference anyway, because it's only Kragnos alive. And these guys up here as well, who aren't really doing anything. And my opponent is able to score 5 points in the last round there. So the final score on here is 61 to 33. So possibly could have been lower. If anyone spots a reason that this should have been 20 points, then let me know. But I feel like taking a double, it should have been impossible for me to have a 20-point turn from that point onwards, I think. Into round 2. And after winning in round 1, what are we going to come up against? So what I'm figuring out so far about this list is that there's massive damage output from the shooting, and I've got good ways of protecting my shooting as well. The Paladors holding things up, blocking things off so that they can't get to them, and then having the Priest and also all my other teleport abilities to get them to safety as well. So let's open up the list for my opponent in this one. Passing seasons. So we've got 4 objectives. We've got these territories here, diagonally opposite each other. Round 1, the green objectives are on. Round 2, the red objectives. Round 3, the green objectives. Round 4, the red objectives. Round 5, the green objectives. So you can't score on the ones you start on in turn 1, so you have to go out if you want to score. Very, very straightforward scoring, because you get 5 points for each objective that's currently active that you hold, and that's it. So it's quite likely to end in draws compared to some of the other missions, because you're just scoring in 5s all the time. So it's very viable for there to be a draw. The bonuses are related to the objectives as well. You can heal, or you can get a bonus to your ward save on some of the objectives, and you can add one to wound rolls. So if you're the underdog, you can get some of those bonuses. And we're up against the Bone Reapers. So let me have a look. And my opponent has actually named the list. It says, just remember, when you defeat me, it hurts my feelings, actually. Which is possibly psychological warfare. So, it's the Hekatos Drill Masters. And let's see, the general is... we'll go back to the wide shot in a minute. We've got Arkan the Black, Mortarch of Sacrament. Then we've got some Kavalos Death Riders, who are... which ones are they? The cavalry here. Then we've got Morghast is it Archai or Archai? Reinforced. Which are the terrifying creatures here, I think there's 4 of them, those gigantic bone abominations. There is a Teretic cohort, which I guess is these fellas here, who are a bit ghostly looking, and they can get around the place with all kinds of movement shenanigans. There is a Liege Mortek in there somewhere, lurking amongst them. There is a unit of Mortek Guard, which is going to be this unit here. I think this is probably the Liege Mortek. There's a unit of Mortek Triaxes, which are going to be these shooty dudes here. And there is a unit of Mortis Reapers, which... Okay, who are the Mortis Reapers and who are the Teretic cohorts? Because I see another unit up here. One of them is some kind of warband. I'm not sure if they're both like Warcry warbands or potentially what's the underworlds, the current underworlds game called. I'm not sure what they're from. But there's a couple of weird units and I can't remember which one's which. But this one has movement shenanigans. This one not so much, but they are quite bony with a bone whip, which is obviously terrifying on its own. So you can see all the juicy stuff is at the back. The potential issues that I'm seeing when this list was described to me, the faction terrain doesn't allow you to teleport near it, which is unique. And also, the distance that it prevents you from teleporting grows over the course of the game. So the longer the game goes, the less teleport shenanigans I can do. It could reach a point where if there are some manifestations as well, we could end up with pretty much the entire table being teleport free. There being nowhere that I can potentially teleport anything. So that could be an issue late game, especially for my list. I've got some units that would just like to teleport onto an objective in the last turn and score it, like this one over here, but that won't be possible because the enemy faction terrain is there unless I go and destroy it. So do I go on a mission to destroy the enemy faction terrain and take that out of the equation? That's something that I've done in the past. I've specifically gone after, against the Gits, I've taken out their shrine to stop units coming back to life when that was tied to it. I'm not sure if it still is in the current Gits, I can't remember. But it definitely used to be, and you could destroy the shrine and stop units coming back. So several times I remember targeting the shrine because of its effects. So, we're not going to be able to get to the meat, but there's a guy with treasure right on the edge there who I could definitely kill and escape. So, potentially we could do that. We've got some treasure on these cavalry as well. It looks like mostly treasure on things that are throwaway or my opponent wants me to go after. So it's kind of like bait. And I have to decide whether I can take it and get to safety. Like a mouse going for the mouse trap. If you think you can get the cheese off that trap without setting it off, or you've got some technique so you can eat the cheese from an angle where it won't spring on you, then by all means go for it. But otherwise, don't mess with it. Turn 1 for me first. And my opponent was also 2 drops, and I have been made to go first. So, I have decided, you can see these guys have had a bit of a pre-game move there. With me going first, I've decided to put my quest stores straight onto their quest marked objective up there. Put my vanquishers onto this one, so I'm going to be scoring turn 1. I finest houred the prosecutors because I wanted to throw them straight into this guy and kill him, turn 1. My priest, though, failed to translocate, so I couldn't get all the units I wanted up there. What I wanted to do was send the prosecutors in, kill this guy, send the paladors in, kill this unit, power through and get away, and then teleport them with my priest. But I don't think he's really close enough to do that. So I've shifted my focus to prosecutors in, kill this guy, prosecutors live, so they block up this area, paladors power through, get away, and just sit back here. Because there's not that much stuff that's going to get to me, surely, in the turn. You wouldn't think so. So I do get them all stuck in there. Prosecutors murder the hero. I make sure not to tag any of the other units nearby. We've got Go For It in the chat. Good evening. The paladors murder most of the skeletons and then power through as far away as they can. And it looks like it's kind of worked, this plan, but I'm not sure whether enough units are going to be able to get to me to be a big threat to the paladors. It's possible, because the space I had to get both units in, the prosecutors aren't actually blocking up that much stuff. Because maybe if the paladors hadn't done quite as well at fighting and there were more of these guys left, that would have provided more of a blockage, but there's only one of them. So maybe they did too well for their own good. Because I think I intentionally didn't shoot them on the way in, because I didn't want to kill all of them. I definitely didn't shoot them in the... Or if I did shoot them in the shooting phase, it was only very mildly. Because I didn't want to actually murder all of them. So it would have been a very difficult charge, and I would have been powering through even less distance if I had to get all the way to here. I think is what my thinking was. Now, at this stage, I'm thinking anyone that wants to come and attack the Paladors, the amount of stuff that's going to fit through that gap, probably not that much. Because the prosecutors are sitting here, so you're going through there, it's going to be limited what you can fit into this space. And any of that stuff that hits the Paladors isn't going to wipe them out in one go. And then they are sitting ducks when I get to drop in all my shooting and just pulverise whatever went after them. And you wouldn't send in just a chaff unit to go after the Paladors. It's going to be something significant and expensive, so something I can put resources into shooting to death. You can see the movement shenanigans from this unit here. They get to move in various phases that you wouldn't normally expect. So I got some treasure, and I got both the active objectives, so 15 points for me. Into round 1 for the enemy. You can see these little ghosties have teleported over here, which is very mean-spirited of them. And we have got this massive unit here, all the way over here. So look where they were. Look how fast they are. All the way back here. One of them's there, one of them's here. They've ended up right the way over here. So they just had a very old, quick sprint to get over here. I'm going to have a quick sip of drink. When I say quick sip of drink, of course I mean I'm going to finish off the entire drink. So, it's really just these lads here. And that is the kind of unit I would like to tempt out into the open. So I'm not too displeased with that. I redeploy the Paladors away from them anyway, so it's going to be a slightly more difficult charge. And that also brings the Paladors to within range of my Priest, so that if we get into the next turn and I don't want to be there, I could maybe teleport them somewhere else, but they can retreat and shoot and all that stuff anyway, so it depends how many of them are alive as well. The enemy are converging on the Questors, who are on their ward save objective, so they're not too scared, even though we do have this character here, whose name I can't remember. Would that be the... where is it? I don't think it's the Liege Mortek. I think that's the one I killed. It'll be the Liege Cavalos. It'll be. There he is. Because Cavalos seems to be the cavalry term. So the Mortark, is it? They are Mortark. Morghast, that's the one. The Morghast get into the Paladors and Tornus because he is right there, so they decide to go for him as well, which does mean he can potentially give them -1 to hit, which is going to be significant. And they are carrying treasure as well. They get Tornus down to 4 wounds, kill most of the Paladors, but not all of them. So I would say that's a successful turn for me there, because now we've got this big, very scary unit ready to be pulverised by my entire army's shooting output. You can see the enemy are wary of all my teleports, because they're really spread out to cover this guy, because I can't land anywhere near this terrain, so he's very safe, but he's doing the same thing Kragnos did in game 1, which is stay safe, but at the expense of not really doing anything. So we'll see if they pay the price. So, my opponent actually scores nothing for taking neither of the objectives that were active, because I think this charge was failed. So, I get first crack at round 2. Vanquishers edge up a little bit. I drop in my entire army's shooting output. We've got the Long Strikes, the Vigilors, the Knight Judicator, and my Priest as well to reduce ward saves. And with all that, I only managed to kill 2 of them somehow. So a hilariously bad round of shooting and fighting, which leads to this unit still being alive. The Questors do munch through this unit quite easily without the backup of their cavalry hero there. So we've got a treasure unit that is not dead. However, they are still sitting there, ready for a potential covering fire from the long strikes. They may have to take more shots from me in the next round. Only 5 points there, because I'm only holding this objective of the 2 that are active. No battle tactics this time. Turn 2 for the enemy. And you can see my priest was here. And he has now chosen to teleport back there because it's a bit safer and doesn't want to be hit by these ghosts because they're not actually that good. So they'd be wary of just charging into this lot and dying, I think. And I think they're here to absorb covering fire as well. You can see these 5 Skellingtons. There was only 1 in that unit, so they've been rallying back up. And the ones with bows are quite dangerous. They managed to kill or chip away at Tornus. Covering fire kills most of the ghosts. There's only 1 left. And here he is. Here's the big fella. Here is Arkan the Black going for the Vanquishers, along with this manifestation. And the Liege Cavalos gets into the Questors. And that was turn 2. Yes, most of the Vanquishers go down, but not all of them, so they're still holding up the enemy, and they do a little bit of damage back to him as well. The Questors kill the Liege Cavalos, which is great. They're still hanging in there. And 10 points for the enemy. So, I'm still in the lead, and my opponent takes the double turn. So if we look at this situation here, if I get the turn, what happens? Surely this unit dies, because I've got long strikes here, Vigilors, Knight Judicator, and I'll be able to bring a unit back at half strength as well. So I definitely kill this treasure unit, I think. The Questors finish off this guy, and the Vanquishers probably die. But I think with this unit gone, that takes out a big heavy-hitting chunk of the opposing army. But, as it is, my opponent gets the double, so what's going to happen now? There's going to be something that gets into my shooting units, but I'm going to be able to teleport some of them away, definitely. So, turn 3. All the Vanquishers are gone. And what's that? A rally roll on the Morghasts. They have 6 wounds each. That requires 6 successes to bring one back to life. Wow, wow, wow. An entire fresh Morghast. That is not great. But I teleported my long strikes out of harm's way up to the top there, so they could then do covering fire into the enemy. And the enemy are converging on my position though, with this unit that I've put a lot of resources into killing, and they're almost at full strength again, which is always a sad time. So we're running out of stuff and the enemy isn't, which is not a good sign now. But is my lead going to be enough to hold on? You can see all these horrible things are now getting into my little flimsy shooting units, killing the Vigilors. But I don't think these knights... I don't know if they charged into the Questors. I don't know if they just failed it. So my opponent scores 5 points there. So it's only a very small scoring turn, but it's important because they were able to get in and do some good damage and not get shot for another turn. My turn 3, you can see the Knight Judicator is stuck in combat with them, so that's not going to end well. The Questors getting out into these guys, and they take some covering fire, I think, from these archers, who have... I don't know, I can't remember if they just have an obscene range, but they have a lot of shots in that unit. So it seems to be a very powerful shooting unit. And my shooting is depressingly poor again, as you can see, because these knights are still alive, even though all my long strikes are there. And was there another unit there that I've been shooting at as well? Let me just go back. This unit's here. So I think I may have killed them with some shooting. And I was fairly confident that I would kill this unit of knights with Questors, Paladors maybe. And unfortunately, took the covering fire. Underestimated that unit, and I only scored 5 points for the turn. You can see it looks like my opponents had less turns, but it's just because that first round was 0. So, that did not go well. and I've only got units left in this corner, really. So I'm definitely going to be losing the fight, but we'll see whether I lose this on score. My opponent goes first in round 4. I teleport my priest up to hide in the corner, preserving that precious treasure. And enemies closing in. I've got my questors back onto the objective, though. And covering fire whittles that unit down, so there's only one left, so I don't think he actually charges now. The little ghosts who have been rallying back as well, they get into my priest. But I countercharge in with my Paladors, and the priest survives, and they kill the ghosts. So it's not all bad. And most of these units can just teleport out of this position, so it's not necessarily the end of the world in terms of scoring. 10 points for my opponent in that round. Into my round 4. I teleport the Paladors into the other corner to charge this manifestation to take that objective. And they fail their rerollable 9-inch charge. The Questor fails to finish off this knight, and my priest is just chilling. My long strikes teleport all the way down here, so they can shoot at this unit and draw them away from the rest of my army. But they don't do that much. I couldn't teleport onto the objectives, because I can't teleport onto this one. The faction terrain's there, and that now has a massive radius of you may not teleport near me. And I can't teleport onto the manifestations. So you can see the manifestations are really not being used maybe the way GW would like them to be used. You would think they designed them to be visualizations of these cool, persistent spell effects that are playing a part in the game and affecting the enemy somehow, whereas all they're used for in the game now is people just summon them, plop them down somewhere to screen out an area from teleports. Which is a perfectly valid strategy, because teleporting around the table is very strong. I just think visually, I would like to see endless spells manifestations used in a different way, and I think they should write the rules better so that you're not incentivized to use them that way. So perhaps make teleporting around slightly less powerful or less common, and allow teleports to be within 9 inches of manifestations. Don't use them to block off teleports, I would say, so that people actually use them for their intended purpose. So at the moment, this is all they really are is just roadblocks. You leave them around the table to screen off an area from the enemy landing on it. And obviously you could say, well, why don't you bring wizards so you could get rid of them? And that's a valid point. So, nothing in round 5 for me. And my opponent, there's not really much worth doing in round 5, because it's already a solid position there. Hold on, let me see here. Yeah, so I did actually get some points there. Because, what did I score? I think maybe we lost track of which objectives were active at the time. So I did get some points there. And then my opponent in the last round splats into all my units, kills them, takes the objectives, and scores a big 15, which just about takes the win. Let me just check the final score on here as well, make sure it's all correct on there. I'm looking on the Millarchy, the event here. And where's the game hiding? There we go. So it's 45-35 to the Bone Reapers. So, what went wrong there? This unit here not dying. And I would say that's about it. I think if they die, my army is under way less of a threat, and I'm then able to focus on scoring points and taking out other things. So, what could I have done differently to guarantee that they died? I don't know. Maybe I could have just thrown even more stuff at them. I don't know what else I had left that I could have thrown in there. Maybe something like my Vanquishers could have also been fighting them. Maybe I was holding them back maybe too much when they could have been getting involved as well, because they are a decent fighting unit. Even against units that don't have 5 or more models, they can still do some damage. They've got a lot of attacks still with a reinforced unit, so maybe they could have been in there. Maybe. It's a tough one. John says, passing seasons is a very weird plan, to be fair. It is. I think the underdog mechanic in it is way too complicated to keep track of, because some of the bonuses you get on the active objective, some of them you get on the inactive objective. And I think it's just too much. Too much going on. Into the next round. Cyclic shifts. So, lots of objectives, which is good for the Stormcast with all the teleporting abilities that I've got. And the underdog twist on this one is that you can turn off a pair of objectives if you're the underdog. So you can turn off these two, the ones on the edge of territories, or you can turn off the two in no man's land, which is a very powerful underdog ability. Is it the most powerful one? Potentially. Just turning off two objectives is a massive deal, especially if you're only a very mild underdog. So, we're up against Sylvaneth, and extremely stylish, well-painted Sylvaneth at that. You'll see pictures of them, and then I'll have even more close-ups that I took as all the armies were out displayed on day 2 as well for the coolest army voting. But there's some freehand stuff going on that you'll see in a moment. So let me just crack open this list we've got here. So I'll go back and talk about my tactics for this game in a second. We have got... Who have we got? We've got Glade Defenders. There is a Warsong Revenant, who is the general, who is one of these two, I think. I can't remember which one is the general. With the Seed of Rebirth and the Realm Root Guide. Then there is a unit of Spite Rider Lancers, which is going to be this unit here. Very nice use of the leaves on these as well, and the plants on the bases, very stylish. We've got Kurnoth Hunters with great swords, this big unit in the woods here. And what else have we got? We've got the Twist Wield, and I have no idea what that is. Maybe it's this little unit here. Could be. There's a unit of Tree Revenants, which also could be them, to be fair. They're reinforced, though, the Tree Revenants, so that's going to be this one here, this unit. Then there are 2 units of Spite Revenants. So they might be... Who are the Spite Revenants? They look quite spiteful. And then there is a Dryker Hammerdreth and a Branch Witch. So it's 4 drops. So it's more drops than me, so I'm going to be able to make the enemy go first. Look at these models, though. I got a few close-ups. Look at that. Very cool, very stylish. And one thing, let me just go back to the last game for a second, because I can't remember if I mentioned it too much, because I can't remember if it actually came up very much. I don't think it did. It's going to be more of an issue in this game now, I think. But what you will have noticed that I didn't really mention during this game, some of the units that I didn't target were hugging obscuring terrain, I think. So obscuring is something that's going to become an issue for this army, because I've got a lot of shooting. So an army like, let's just zoom forward again, like the Sylvaneth, who can be dropping in their trees and making obscuring terrain around the place, that's potentially an issue, because my shooting units need to be able to see you to actually shoot you. So, what is my plan here? You can see I've got the Paladors in the middle. They are not concerned about the enemy turn 1. There's not a huge amount of threat projection in turn 1. The enemy have the ability to make certain terrain features is it overgrown, the expression that they use for the Sylvaneth? So they can make certain pieces of terrain eligible for example, this horrible thing here to teleport through to fight you. So my faction terrain's hiding right in the corner, and yeah, it's going to be tricky. There's going to be trees popping up around the place. I'm just going to have to hit and run better than they do, and I'm going to try and hit things that don't come back where possible, but a lot of the stuff can come back, I think, now. And otherwise, to keep scoring points, don't get drawn into the Kurnoth Hunters unless I think I can actually kill them. but chances are they're going to hang out in the obscuring terrain because they're a combat unit and they don't want to get shot. So I'll probably leave them alone unless they want to wander out into the open. But there's a lot of obscuring terrain on this battlefield. I've got my shooting stuff in the sky as usual. And look at that banner. Freehand. Turn 1, I make the enemy go first, as you would expect. And you can see that my priest is getting some prayer points prepared for the next turn. And the enemy are staying in the obscuring terrain mostly, apart from the things that can't benefit from it, which isn't much. You can see they're all just clinging to the terrain though, enemy trees popping up. And I think this objective has now been made obscuring as well. I think that's what that token... Oh no, that's the enemy control token. So in some of the games I remember to put these tokens down to show who's controlling which piece of terrain, or which objective. So I put the circle for me and the spiky circle for the enemy. Quest marked objective in the corner, because I'm confident that this thing is not going to stay there. So I'll be able to teleport up there at some point, I think. 13 points for the enemy. With the battle tactics, what were they? Let me have a check here. Scouting Force and Restless Energy. So Scouting Force, the start of that's very easy on certain battle plans. And into my turn 1. My Prosecutors have popped up, which is... Let me just show you where that was. So they came in to murder this unit here. And then in the centre, you can see the Paladors have got stuck right into everybody, with Finest Hour and all that defense played on them, just crunching right into the enemy, and then I'm going to pull them away. And I've withdrawn them from combat and kind of built this blockade here, because I also had my shooting units down. So I'm playing to try and get a double here and do even more damage. So I got in, killed the flying cavalry. As you can see, these guys, they seem to have disappeared suspiciously, and I've now formed a blockade after powering through away from this unit. So you can guarantee a power through if you're fighting 2 units and you put all your attacks into one and leave the other unit alive entirely, so you've got no risk of killing them, so you can guarantee you can get away, because you can't power through if there's nothing to power through against. So if you don't want the enemy to power through against you, leave them out only units that are small enough that they might accidentally kill the whole thing, and then they'll be stuck there and can't power through. That would be my advice. So I'm feeling pretty good about that turn. I've got all my shooting stuff down and it's protected, and there's not a huge amount of space for the enemy to pop up from yet. However, that was me not fully understanding the way that the trees work, but I have got some treasure already, 2 of the treasure units. So 15 points, slight lead. The other one has to be scored next time. Enemy first in round 2. And my opponent, being the underdog, shuts off the flank objectives, one of which I am on with the Questors at the moment. And the Prosecutors have an enemy ability played on them, so that any commands that they want to use will cost an additional command point, which is very mean. And some Ethereals being thrown around, -1 to wound effects being thrown around. And here's something I didn't think about. So the enemy trees can pop up 3 inches away from me, which means that that enemy horrible thing, which unit is that? Let me have a look. I think that's Dryker, can appear out of this thing and just fight me immediately. So I didn't really factor that in when I was building a blockade. So the enemy are now converging on the Paladors, which is a reasonable thing to do, but if it draws the Tornus out into the open for me to shoot, I'm quite happy about that. You can see Dryker does pop out of there and gets into the long strikes, who did redeploy a bit just to spread my units out, so maybe they wouldn't all get killed. The Prosecutors take a bit of damage from some shooting attacks, I think. And the Paladors, the Tornus have got into them along with this manifestation. And most of the long strikes are dead, but as long as one's alive, they can potentially escape. The Vigilors then go in and do some damage to this thing. But then finally the long strike does actually die in the end. I think there's some other ability that finished off the unit. So Palador's all gone. But the enemy are now in the open Waiting to be shot, unless they get to redeploy towards something that's obscuring. I say waiting to be shot, but where are all my shooting units now, you say? I think I've still got my the Knight Judicator in the sky at this stage. So the enemy units heal a bit as well at the end of the turn because they're tree people and they're mean like that. So 15 points for the enemy. Turn 2 for me. So you can see I brought 3 long strikes back to life just to finish off Dryker. And I used all that attack just to get the job done. I had the priest over here as well to reduce any kind of ward save that was going on potentially there. I can't remember if there was a ward save. If not, then the priest is just staying safe down here. So I've scored my treasure for that round. I also take an objective off the enemy. And which one was it? I think it was this one, because Dryker had taken this objective and now I've taken it back. So 18-point turn, so good scoring, but I didn't really do anything about this horrible mess over here because I focused on bringing this thing down. I've got Vanquishers just defending this corner objective. The reason for that is because this objective can never be turned off. So I don't want the enemy just teleporting onto it. I want to keep it fully protected. Same reason the Questors want to have this objective here, because it can never be turned off, so that's why I've quest marked it. You can see they didn't make a charge into the enemy this turn, despite trying, because the enemy redeployed further away from them. And they failed their charge. And turn 3. So you can see that, hold on. Turn 3 is going to me. The enemy redeploy into the obscuring, I think it's a place of power, this thing, which is obscuring. So I can't shoot that unit anymore. So basically the whole table is obscuring now. So it's very difficult for the shooting. Questors do get into the quest marked objective up here with Finest Hour, and they're going to start kicking butts up there, kicking tree butts if you will. And they do kick all the tree butts, which is very nice. I use what I've got in the middle with 3 long strikes to try and do as much shooting as I can into the units I'm allowed to shoot. Which is, I think, this unit here, but not to any huge effect. So really I'm just holding on to these objectives that can't be turned off with strong, tough to crack units. And then in the middle it's looking a little bit more vulnerable though. You can see that these 2 objectives were turned off this turn by my opponent, presumably because I'm just on this one. And my opponent feels confident of having this one next turn maybe. Oh yeah, also, end of turn 3, I then realised because I'd left the Knight Judicator so close to the dead pile that I forgot that he hadn't come down yet. So end of turn 3, realised, oh yeah, there he is, in the dead pile, even though he's not been put on the battlefield yet, so we're not going to have a Knight Judicator for this game. Enemy Manifestation going for my Priest, and the long strikes teleport themselves, or the heat maybe teleports them somewhere safer towards the portal. So yeah, because I think they were about here. So it gets them away from the manifestations. They're not going to get eaten quite so easily. The enemy moving towards my Vigilors there, ready to try and take this objective off me. We've got a unit of these horrible things down here as well. And they aren't really tangling too much with the Questors. They put the +1 command point if they want to do anything effect on them, which is mean, obviously. Tornus the Redeemed gets charged by everyone under the sun. And the Vigilors you'd expect to die to the Kurnoths as well, who are a mighty fighting unit, and they do. The enemy manifestation does make it into my Priest, and Tornus the Redeemed is on 2 wounds. He's hanging in there, he's quite survivable with his 5+ ward save. And let me just check something here. Oh yeah, it wasn't telling me how many people were viewing the stream for a second there. That's a not bad number for a previously unannounced stream that I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do because my internet was dead until an hour beforehand. Okay, only 5 points for the enemy there. So I'm in the lead, but not in terms of killing stuff. Oh yeah, at the end of the turn there's some kind of horrible ability that goes off that just kills Tornus the Redeemed as well, which is sad. So I've got long strikes who are constantly zapping themselves around the place to not die. I've got the 2 corner objectives pretty much held down for the moment, but that's about it. You can see these two objectives were turned off now. In turn 4. So I was able to, let's see, I don't know if the long strikes were able to kill anybody. Let me have a look at who was there. I think maybe this thing here. I think maybe I just murdered that, or tried to murder that hero, but didn't quite manage it yet. So I do manage to score 8 points though, and then into the enemy turn, they're closing in on my positions somewhat, but for the most part, they don't necessarily want to go after the questors in the corner or the vanquishers necessarily with just a small amount of stuff because they'd just lose. So they're looking at scoring points without just committing everything or committing a small amount of stuff in there. So you can see one unit's got into the vanquishers, which is going to make a start on chipping away at them before the good stuff gets there, presumably. But it doesn't though. The vanquishers just vanquish them. So you can see why I thought the vanquishers were quite safe from any measly units. I don't know if anyone else had the opportunity to reach them that turn though. My opponent gets a decent scoring round though, with 13 for holding the active objectives. And I've got the 2 in the corners though, but my opponent is able to tick off some battle tactic stuff that I'm not able to really stop, like Scouting Force and Restless Energy. Scouting Force is quite easy to do from this point, I think. So, the Restless Energy is the one that requires taking an objective off the opponent and then all the objectives in enemy territory. So that might be tricky, but Scouting Force I think is quite easy to do. So, round 5 I get the first go at it and I'm able to score 8 points without doing too much because I'm basically just sitting on objectives. In order for me to score a good number of points though, what I need to do is to take this objective. And I think maybe I've left it too long, because to get the next part of Restless Energy, I need to control both of these. So maybe I should have been committing. But the reason is, in fact, both of us, we haven't scored higher, because as soon as we move off an objective, the enemy have the means to just land right on it. So we've had to defend our objectives and not move off them, looking to expand to score our own points, because we've been so focused defensively on what the enemy can do. So at this stage, the questors try and make a charge into a manifestation to take that objective, which would give me a lot of points, because that objective is active, so it would give me more than the enemy, so it would give me a bonus for that, and also I'd get a battle tactic if I took this as well. But they don't make it, so I get 8 points. And then the enemy are able to get onto this objective against the vanquishers, but are able to score 13 again, aren't able to kill them all, and that results in, let me just check the final numbers on the app here. So somehow we end up with a result of 59-59, a dead draw. And it seemed like it could be going that way. When we were going into the last turn, we were looking at what the scoring potential was, and we realised it was a distinct possibility that could happen. Now obviously, if my questors make their charge into the enemy manifestation, they could then pile in onto this objective and just take it off this thing, if they get enough of them on there. I think that's character's only worth 2, so I only need to get 3 of them on there. And then the enemy could have, of course, won it if they'd managed to take more of the objectives as well. I think this one was still mine at the end with the vanquishers, because not enough of them died. So if, for example, the Kurnoths had made it into them and killed them, that could have swung it the enemy's way. All in all, it was very tricky to shoot things in the last 2 games, actually, because there was a lot of obscuring terrain going on. And when I was able to shoot things, obviously, I could just delete them, except for that notable moment in the previous game against the big horrible bone monsters. So, a win, a loss, a draw. Perfectly mid-table so far. Into the next round. Roiling Roots. We've got 6 objectives, again good for teleportees. And the underdog bonus is that you can put strike last onto a pair of objectives, which can be significant, but not as good as just turning them off. And the scoring is very straightforward here. You want an objective, you want pairs, and you want more than your opponent. So the pairs are here. So if you hold the middle, you get a pair. If you hold both flanks, you get a pair. And we're up against Filthy, Disgusting, Nurgle. And I'm going to open up that list here. So the Filthy, Disgusting, Vile, Putrid, Maggotkin of Nurgle. So where is that list? Is the list not actually on here? Surely it is. I'm not seeing it though. Maybe the list isn't on there. But I can tell you roughly what everything is anyway. So, we've got a big unit of... Well, I say I can tell you what they are, but they're like the mini Blight Kings. And I can't remember what that unit is actually called, so a lot of this stuff's new. But there is the spellcasting version of the Great Unclean One, whose name I also can't remember. There is the Glotkin. There are 3 of the new horrible putrid cavalry, the Slob Knights, or whatever they're called. Oh yeah, Rot Swords, there you go. Big unit of Rot Swords. Then we've got the Flies, the Plague Flies of Doom. And we've got a couple of little characters lurking around. We've got this horrible fella. We've got something hiding at the back there. Lots of little characters sneaking around. And Rotigus, I'm going to assume it's the Scourge of Gyran one. Because I assume that's better at the moment. But yeah, I'm not seeing the list on the app here. I can see the Battle Tactics, Master the Paths, and Wrathful Cycles. But it's not giving me the list on here for this army. Maybe, because I remember some players actually had problems inputting their lists into Malarkey before the event, so maybe it's one of those. So, there's going to be disease. We're going to have this piece of terrain working its round the place. Disease will be put, Harbinger of Decay on the horse, thank you. There's going to be disease applied to some of my units when I'm stuck in combat with the enemy. Now, I'm quite resistant to that for 2 reasons. One, Paladors and their ability to power through really far away, which I'm going to be playing towards, which will keep them away from the enemy when the disease is dished out. Also, Tornus the Redeemed has a combat ability, so he doesn't have to actually be in combat to do it. On a 3-up, he can heal all the Stormcast friendly units next to him. So that would remove disease from every unit around him on a 3-up, which is quite strong against Nurgle. So maybe a good reason for Tornus to be included if you're going to be facing Nurgle a lot there, because he's got that very strong healing ability. And I'm not going to keep my units very close together because I don't want them passing disease to each other. So I think the term for the unit that my opponent picked to be the Plague Progenitors is my Prosecutors. So Prosecutors are the Plague Progenitors. Prosecutorial progenitoring of the Plague. And I think the reason they're a good choice is because you roll dice and if you... What is it you have to get? Is it above their wounds characteristic or something? And at that point it succeeds. So that unit is then extra vulnerable to disease and passing it on for the whole game. So if you pick a unit that's only got 2 wounds, it's just automatic. So they were the best, juiciest target for it. So I'm going to keep them nowhere near the rest of my own troops. And let me go back to the wide shot here. So, quest marked objective. I've not gone for one in enemy territory because I think there's going to be horrible Nurgly manifestations that pop up and block me from getting to like this one. I might as well just pick one here and just defend this narrow pass with the Questors. Then the Paladors can go and hit something and get out on this side, and there's any narrow paths to get through. So the Questors are guarding here, Paladors are covering this side, and then maybe if the enemy are advancing down the centre here and get stuck in with some of my units in the middle, I can maybe drop down some stuff over here and hit them from both sides and maybe pin the enemy into this small section. So if you're going to castle up, I'm going to try and pin you into a smaller area so you can hold less of the objectives. So that's the plan. Tornus the Redeemed is on the table, all my shooting is off the table, and the Vanquishers are off the table as well, because they want to drop in onto an objective at some point. Look at this horrible Nurgliness. I have actually been thinking, you know, at some point I could do a Nurgle army one day. I think I could possibly get behind doing Nurgle. I don't care what their playstyle is particularly, I just think they're cool because I painted a Great Unclean one for the Old World, which is an old metal one, and I really liked the yellow paint job I did on it. So I wouldn't mind painting a Great Unclean one. I wouldn't want to paint hundreds of infantry though, so I'd have to go for a very elite list. Just to do some cool nurgly stuff. So, as you can imagine, against my shooting list, everyone is just making the terrain and the objectives obscuring. And I would go on record as saying that obscuring is too good. Not necessarily too good, but not thematic enough. I don't think, for example, a unit of cavalry skirting around the edges of a building should be obscured from the enemy. I think it should be terrain that you step into, like woods. If you're in the woods, definitely you're obscured. I don't know whether obscured should mean that you can't be seen either. I feel like it should mean there are serious penalties to shooting you, or maybe the range, you have to be closer to shoot them. But yes, I think it's not very good for just the visuals of a game. When you look at a game of Warhammer, you don't really see opposing battle lines in Age of Sigmar with the way the rules are presented. And I think the way obscuring works only takes it further away from opposing battle lines, which is kind of what we want to see visually. Even if the mechanics are more intricate than that and you've got teleporting, you still want it to look vaguely like two armies fighting each other, not kind of shiftily skirting around the edges of a building to keep themselves hidden from enemy shooting. I think that's a bit excessive. So, let's see. I obviously make my opponent go first to see if they're going to spread out a bit. And this piece of terrain here can increase the ward save of enemy units. And the rot swords are kind of out on their own there on this objective, and they do have treasure on them. So I'm eyeing them up immediately as a potential target for the Paladors, because everything else is kind of bundled together. We've got Rotigus, I think it is, and the Glotkin are very well protected there. The main thing, well, one of the things I'm concerned about actually is there is a strike first or strike last ability that these knights have. So I'm concerned about that as well, because I don't have any strike first or strike last in this list. So, the prosecutors lose some of their number to the plague in turn 1. And 12 points for the enemy in round 1. Into my turn 1. So you can see the rot swords have been cut down massively. Look how many there were. There's a huge bundle of them, and now loads of them are toast, because I decided, you know what, my gun line, once I drop it in, that's not really a commitment, because the long strikes can teleport on their own. Priest can teleport another one of the units. I could relocate most of this stuff very easily. So I decide I'm just going to go all in and try and murder this unit. If I can get the double, finish them off as well, that'd be good. And that's the kind of unit normally late in the game gets onto an objective and I can't do anything about it because there's too many, and at that stage of the game I don't have the killing power to deal with them. But early in the game, when I've got everything, I can take them out. And what's going to punish me for this? Not much, because they're all over here in this bundle protecting the big monsters. And if they want to come and get me, they're going to have to go through the Questors, who have a ward save right now, and how much stuff is going to be able to reach the Questors right now. Paladors have powered through to get into this formation here to protect the shooting, which also means if the enemy want to come down here, it's long charges to get to the Paladors as well. The reason I powered through, because often I would want to stay in combat with a unit if I want to then maybe shoot them so they don't move away from me or rally, but in this instance I didn't want the Paladors to become diseased, so that's why I was certainly convinced to do that. The prosecutors just hiding at the back, carrying their disease around, because I've just written them off basically, because they're going to get killed by the disease. I only score 5 points, but I think we're well on the way to killing this unit, which is a big deal, because I think they would be very difficult to shift late in the game. If they work their way onto an important objective, I wouldn't be able to clear them later. So the prosecutors all die from the plague, and I do get the double turn. So I take it, Tornus the Redeemed, onto an objective. The Paladors and all my shooting finish off the Rot Swords, which is very good, which gets me I think the treasure on them was deleted, which I'm not too concerned about, because just killing that unit is a big deal on its own. And taking a double turn, you often look at, are you exposing yourself to what the enemy can do to you now with a potential double turn? In this instance, I've put the Vanquishers down here and the Questors. So any enemies that want to come through this narrow pass are going to have to fight 2 of my stronger fighting units. If they want to come this way, they have to spend at least 1 turn fighting the Paladors and suffering probably 2 turns of covering fire if they want to come and get my shooting stuff. And that's if I don't teleport the long strikes away with the Priest anyway. So I think I'm in a decent position to face the enemy onslaught, and they're going to be spreading out then, which is what I want them to do. So you can see my Priest often is going to pop up near the enemy when I'm about to shoot them because he's going to reduce their ward save by 1. So 10 points, but killed off a valuable unit. Not just in terms of points, but in terms of its power in the battlefield later on. With the kind of units, normally I go here all in and kill a monster, and there's a big unit of like 10 Blight Kings or something, and I just have no chance of dealing with it later because half my army's dead by then, and there's too many wounds there. So we're just treating them like a monster, basically, just taking them out, get rid of them, and then deal with the rest. And they are 400 points as well, so they're definitely not cheap. It's taken my entire army 2 turns to kill them, but I think it was a good move still. You can see the Paladors are covered in disease now, because there's multiple ways of them catching the disease. It seems quite difficult to stop, because even if you get away from the enemy, they can still do a ranged version of it. So in the enemy turn, I teleport the long strikes away, because they're the unit I need to keep safe, so I teleport them next to my teleport chamber, because obviously they can just walk in there and teleport somewhere else. The enemy are still kind of shrouding the big monsters and not taking up too much space, which I'm okay with. They only score 5 points there. And they do move up, blockading me from getting everything into the Glotkin. Or if I want to fight the knights, I would have Strike Last put on me, and then the Glotkin would get to hit me first. So charging in there would be a terrible idea. So I'm going to identify different targets. What is a target I can take out here? These flies, kind of on their own. Now, there is a mistake, not a rules mistake, but a tactical mistake that I'm going to make in a minute. Because this is going to be a very close scoring game, because there's a lot of stuff I'm not going to be able to kill, so I won't have enough time to bring my entire army into killing both of these big monsters and everything else. So, it's going to be close scoring, because there's only so many objectives I can hold on to, and a lot of my units are more fragile than the enemy units. So, in order to lock the enemy out of scoring one of their battle tactics at all, at this stage I should be prioritising keeping all my heroes alive to prevent the first stage of Master the Paths, I think it is. Whichever one it is, I think it's that. So I should be taking my heroes away from the enemy, not using them for anything, just keeping them safe now, and that's going to deny the enemy potentially 15 points between now and the end of the game. All I have to do is just hide my heroes. They're not going to catch me because I've got a teleporting priest. I've got this guy who can move 6 and can be teleported, especially if I move him down here. And I've got Tornus the Redeemed, who is very fast and resilient as well. So, but what I'm going to do actually is use Tornus the Redeemed and go on the offensive instead and use him to support my other units and go after the flies. So, you can see I've got my long strikes over there as well. Teleport through the portal, bring back 3 fresh Paladors after the other ones are killed at the start of that turn. And my Knight's Judicator is sent over here by the Priest as well. So I'm putting a lot into killing these Knights and the flies, which I'm about to do. My Priest is diseased, which is not very nice. And Finest Hour on Tornus the Redeemed, because I want him to go in, kill something. The Paladors also to go in, and that would then give Tornus time to escape, is my theory. And I also think if I kill this unit of flies and potentially these knights, there's not really anything left then. It's just 2 monsters to chase me around. So I'm kind of swamping them. I'm hoping to get my Vanquishers maybe to charge in onto this guy on the objective. And I do get to the flies, and there's 1 left up there. So I did some good damage, and I'm again using the Paladors to screen the rest of my army after the combat. I actually got in and killed... Did I actually kill any of the knights? I'm not sure if I did kill any of them. but I did some shooting into them, I think. May have done some wounds to them and then got out again. So I got the first part of Restless Energy. I took an objective off my opponent, which was this one, because the Paladors are still on it. And I killed the flies that were there. So, 15 points, good round. And I can feel a sneeze brewing, so I'm going to mute the microphone a second. And we're back. So, Tornus, I feel fairly confident in his safety there. And over here, you can see I didn't make my charge into any of the little heroes. There's lots of heroes dancing around up there. Turn 3 for the enemy. The Glotkin. And Rotigus. I've got some nice close-ups of them here for you. And they're going to go and try and get stuck in. Because it's about time they got into a fight. Rotigus gets into the Vanquishers and the Vigilors. Now, that's a lot of bodies for him to get through, and he doesn't have a lot of attacks. So he has to succeed, otherwise he's going to be stuck fighting them for a long time. He would have ideally liked to have charged my Priest and killed him, because that would have started the battle tactic. But my Priest, I think, was slightly too far away. The Glotkin gets into the Paladors, as do the Knights. They want to try and put some attacks into Tornus, obviously, because that would be the step into the battle tactic as well. And you can see in a lot of these games we're deciding, because the terrain's so big, we're deciding you can walk on the base. Because we've got some big based stuff, and there's not a lot of space. And you can see Rotigus does a very little, actually. Doesn't do much at all. All the Paladors get killed, unfortunately, but Tornus is still hanging in there. My Priest is still hanging in there despite being diseased. Tornus is now diseased as well. But, as I said, he has an ability where he can just wipe that away, so he's going to be doing that in a minute. So, all my heroes are still alive, so we're still preserving that for now. And 5 points for the enemy, so it's going quite well still, I would say. And I get first crack at round 4 as well, so my heroes do get a chance to get out of there. Tornus goes towards that corner, the enemy redeploy after him, and he removes his disease with his combat ability. I teleport the long strikes over to this side to try and murder Rotigus, and I throw the Questors on there as well, so I abandon their objective to try and bring down this treasure unit. So I've got Finest Hour Vanquishers, I've got Vigilors, and I've got the Questors. Because Rotigus did so badly last time, I thought, actually, I've got a chance to finish him off now. Let's just throw everything into him. And a lovely blurry picture of my portal there. So my Priest teleports back to the portal. And he's still diseased, though. So at some point, he's probably going to have to try and rally to get rid of that. And I only get 5 points because I failed to kill Rotigus. I think I leave him alive with a very small number of wounds. But obviously, all this you would expect to have killed him. Into my opponent's turn 4, and Rotigus in action. That would have made a good video thumbnail, actually. The Questors on a holy quest to stab their sword into that mouth. So, Tornus the Redeemed is being chased. He redeploys further away, but they still manage to catch him. So he's relying on succeeding with his -1 to hit combat ability there to make himself harder to hurt. And I have covering fire potentially to bring down Rotigus now, and he does go down this turn. So that's going to be some treasure for my next turn. And the long strikes have no commands played on them actually, so I wasn't able to do the covering fire that I wanted. It had to be finished off in combat. And you can see that this horrible fella, the Harbinger, gets into the combat as well. And Tornus the Redeemed dies, so he actually fails with his 3-up -1 to hit effect, which would have been a big deal there, because it probably would have kept him alive for a turn. He failed it, and now he's dead. So the enemy have started on the step towards achieving more battle tactics now. So I'm regretting Tornus the Redeemed even getting involved at all. He could have just flown away and hid somewhere. It's not that easy, though, because they do take up a lot of space, some of these Nurgle things. So 15-point round for the enemy. And into round 5 for me, I managed to get a 10-point turn because we're running out of time at this point, and we decide there's certain obvious things we can do that will affect scoring and certain things that don't affect scoring at all. So trying to complete tactics, trying to get onto objectives with charges onto an objective. And I don't manage to get any of my units onto this objective, which would have got me a load of points. I think it was about 10 points if I'd made a charge onto there, but I don't think I did. And in the enemy turn, it's also 10 points. And let me just pull up the final score here to make sure I'm reporting it correctly. So it is a win to Nurgle, 52 points to 45. So they were able to tick off those extra battle tactics in the last turn because Tornus the Redeemed was dead, basically. So if he had stayed hidden, then it probably would have been a Stormcast win, or if I'd made it onto this objective with anything, it would have been a Stormcast win, I think, as well, because I think that was a 10-point swing hinging on this objective. I believe, if I remember correctly. So obviously losing by 7 points, a couple of things could have gone differently to swing it, but I'm fairly happy with how the game went still. The result, not really that big of an issue, because neither of us, I don't think, we're going to win the event from this position, having already lost at least one game up to this point. And I think I'd had some good moves in there. I think bringing down this big unit with my whole army was good. I think I locked down a lot of the Nurgle stuff quite well. I think maybe I was just too aggressive going after the flies at one point. Other than that, I think it was okay though. I think this objective, the decision to take the Questors off it was to bring down Rotigus, which ultimately got me some points. And I think the Glockkin is probably a match for the Questors anyway, so if they'd stayed there, Glockkin may well have just murdered them, even with their ward saved. So, not sure what I would do differently apart from the handling of the heroes. And that is one thing to consider when you're building this kind of Stormcast list, I think. If you've got some heroes that aren't super expensive, you're not losing a lot if they don't throw themselves into the fight. They have other abilities they can do that benefit the army without fighting. For example, the priest can be teleporting units around. The knight judicator can be shooting from a reasonable distance away and staying safe. I think Tornus the Redeemed in this game maybe would have been better just going around putting out disease fires on some of my units rather than getting stuck into the fight. Because while he was alive, while all my heroes were alive, I was denying the enemy a lot of points, which they were able to scoop up at the end. Dark says, the knights apply fight last on a 3-up, but if you're in combat with another unit, they gain a +1 to that skill. Yes, that's right. If they're in combat, if you're in combat with 2 units, I think it's units of a specific type are also in combat with you, that unit, then they get +1 to it as well. So you're very likely to be given strike last against them, basically. Doc says, though, but did better than a melee army, those rot swords would have taken a lot more effort to take down in melee. Yes, they would. Putting a lot of shooting into them. Also, one thing my opponent could have done drastically different as well was try to make that objective obscuring on the turn that I got the double turn. Because there was less of them, so they would have physically fit onto it at that point as well. But I think he just forgot about using the place of power to make objectives obscuring, potentially. Which, I think making objectives obscuring is a little bit silly anyway, but could have potentially saved them from taking a lot of shooting. Whether it would have saved them from dying eventually, maybe. And in fact, if that had become an obscuring objective, I may well have pivoted and gone after something else entirely and relocated my entire gun line and just left them there, because I wouldn't have been confident the Paladors would charge in there and kill them on their own. You need all this shooting support as well. So I think running this many points of shooting, into some things it's going to be great, but when there's a lot of obscuring around and the enemy don't have monsters or flying stuff for you to shoot, then you're going to be left without a target sometimes as well. And also my opponent was saying that the feculent piece of terrain often is going to be near the rot swords to give them the extra ward save. But on this occasion, he was so concerned that my long strikes and my other shooting was going to drop in and murder the big monsters that he put it next to them as well. and was kind of luring me into attacking the rot swords by putting treasure on them, and didn't really factor in that I would drop in my entire army and just obliterate them, which I still think was the right thing to do with the setup. I think maybe just the end of the game should have been handled differently by me. Okay, pictures of the armies before the final round. We have got some Daughters of Cain. Very lavish plant life on some of these bases. We have got some gnomes. Obviously gits, but gnome form. Very gnomish. And these appear to be troll badgers, dare I say it. Very cool. We've got some Seraphon. Bit of slan action there. Plenty of cavalry. We have got Iron Jaws. Not the Iron Jaws that I faced. This is another Iron Jaws. We've got some Cities of Sigmar with some, I think it's a fully printed army rather than the official G-dubs. We have got Sylvaneth. This is the one that I faced. Very cool. Very nice. Very stylish. We've got some more Stormcast with some Reclusians. Many Prosecutors. Looks like 2 reinforced units and 1 non-reinforced unit of Prosecutors, and Iridan the Witness. And a small unit of Vanquishers. So that is quite a low wound army by the looks of things. Then we have got more Nurgle. Very grisly, very gruesome. And we've got some Hellsmiths. Look at that. Some of these models are actually pretty cool in this colour scheme. I don't think anything is going to sell me on the mechanical Taurus, though. I think the whole army would have benefited greatly from certain units being a bit more organic, rather than so machine-like. I think the Taurus is one of them. I think this bull thing as well. I can't remember what that's called. I think the infantry are fine. They don't particularly inspire me. So I think for people that were waiting for the return of Chaos Dwarves after all these years, I think the models in general aren't the most inspiring. But I think these look quite nice though, with the colour scheme that's been used on these. We've got a display board with some more Sylvaneth. A bit of a metallic beetle action there. What is the audience's opinion on display boards? Do you think that should get you bonus points, or do you think you should have points knocked off for having a display board? I've only ever used a display board in Kings of War briefly for my undead halfling army. I made kind of a graveyard with a crypt inside it. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of that. It's one of the things that didn't move with me to Nottingham because it was going to take up too much space, and it was a very specific thing. This giant display board for this one very niche army that I wasn't using very often. So you can probably find pictures of it or video of it somewhere on the channel if you're interested in that. We have got some vile Gravelords. We have got some Tzeentch. Very colourful, very bold, which gets them bonus points from me. Nice eyeball action there. We have got Khorne. And this, you'll recognise this base scheme because this is the army that is normally just several Bloodthirsters and nothing else. So trying out infantry this time. And normally we play each other as well, but on this occasion we did not. Into the last round, linked ley lines. So fairly simple. The scoring, it looks a bit complicated. You've got 4 different criteria, but really you just want to be holding objectives in a line. It's not that difficult to comprehend. You either want the vertical line or the horizontal line to get maximum points. 3 for an objective, 3 for 2, 2 for pairs, and 2 for the ley line. So you get full points if you control an entire line. That's the gist of it. And the underdog abilities are a little bit underwhelming. They're just manifestation related, so not very exciting for me. Dark says, I already saw the Bloodthirster army like 3 or 4 times on the videos. He he he. Yes, we always play each other, it seems, but not at this event. I think we played each other at maybe the last 3 events, possibly. And it's not necessarily the best matchup for Bloodthirsters, the kind of stuff I bring. It's either Long Strikes or Annihilators are just really good against Bloodthirsters. Any monster that's in that mid-wound range, I've talked about it before with Kragnos, anything that's like 14 to 20 wounds, it's going to be expensive, and Stormcast have ways of just taking those things out quite easily. We've got some really good high-rend anti-monster stuff. Or anti-hero extra rend on the long strikes, for example. We've got Yndrasta, who's really good at taking down monsters as well with mega damage. So I think those sort of level of monsters struggle big time against Stormcast, especially the lists that don't bring other stuff as well to screen them with. So if you only have Bloodthirsters, more often than not, I think Stormcast are a horrible matchup for you. Unless they just roll badly or you can make your ward saves. So, it is the Seraphon. So let me open up this list because we don't see Seraphon a huge amount. So this list is actually here, so let's have a look. We have got the terrifying Star Master. No, the Slan Star Master is not that terrifying, but he's the general. And he's got Croxigor reinforced, so that's a big 400-point unit. 2 units of Saurus warriors, 1 there, and 1... Where's the other one? There's another one lurking in there somewhere. Then, Lord Croak himself in the other regiment. So Lord Croak is terrifying because he's killable, but that's not why he's terrifying. He is killable. He's terrifying because you can put a lot into him, and if you don't make that one roll that could kill him, he just goes back to full health. Basically, you do damage to him, and then you have a dice test at the end of the turn to see if he's taken enough damage to die yet. And if he hasn't, then he just goes back to full health. And the other reason he's scary is because he can spam that horrible spell that just does D3 mortal wounds to multiple units. He can do it over and over. So he can do huge damage if he gets close. And that's in addition to the mortal wounds that can be spewed out by the temple as well, which can target terrain features and do mortal damage to units nearby. So, mortal wound output, very scary. There is an Engine of the Gods, which is the Stegodon. Yeah. There is a unit of Raptidon Chargers, which are the lighter of the 2 cavalry units that are available to the Seraphon. There is a Sunblood Pack, which is a small unit of 3 kind of fancy Saurus dudes at the back there. There is... Oh no. Is that not the Sunblood Pack? Which is the Sunblood Pack? There's a Sunblood Pack, and there's also the Sigil Convocation. Regiment of Renown. Which is that? Yeah, I think it is the Sunblood Pack. And the Regiment of Renown is somewhere else. You can see they've got a Slan hiding around there. And there's the other Saurus unit. I think that is the Sigil Convocation Regiment of Renown there. Yeah, it's like a wizard. Okay, so let's go back to the wide chart and talk about the tactics for this one then. So, I want to get ley lines. My opponent is 3 drops. I'm obviously going to want to make my opponent go first, because I don't want to be sitting there and take multiple turns of Lord Croak's magic missiles without being able to do anything back. And if my opponent goes first, it means I'm not in range to be targeted by any of the spells in turn 1, which is a big deal. It does mean my opponent could get up and claim a ley line immediately, and that wouldn't bother me at all because that gives me targets to go and kill on the ley lines and take them back and get my battle tactic part 1 as well. And then I hold the line, which sounds good to me. And then there's potential for a double turn, so I can avoid so much of the missile spam from Croak and get stuck into the good stuff after that, maybe. You can see everyone is crowded into this bit of obscuring terrain. When you're against a gun line, that is going to happen. On this side, there's not as much stuff. You can see there's just this one unit of Saurus warriors there. So that's a juicy target for my Paladors to go and kill. And I've got most of my shooting, or pretty much all the long-range shooting in the sky again, and the Vanquishers, because I don't need them on the table yet. There they are. And look at that bundle. All in the obscuring forest. Okay, immediately, turn 1 for the enemy. There's a purple sun out on the loose. I get some prayer points generated on my priest, and the enemy move up and touch all the objectives. So Engine of the Gods isn't actually that terrifying. It's only 150 points. It's not something we need to think is going to rampage through the entire army and kill everybody, despite how menacing it looks. And you can see the wizard is sitting over here, preventing me from teleporting in over here near the slan. If you kill the slan, the enemy units can't come back to life as well, so that is a big deal. So, I'm going to try and take out this unit, and that's the main goal for turn 1. I'm not going to necessarily look for a big score turn 1, I'm just going to set up ready for trying to get a double and staying out of the way of Croak until he's out exposed, and then I'm going to try and murder him. So I get my Paladors and Tornus in there and kill that unit that was on the objective immediately. Now, by the way, my opponent has mastered the paths and restless energy, so wants to kill a hero and wants to take an objective off me. You can see I used Finest Hour immediately on them, just to guarantee I kill that unit. I had my Questors ready to go for their quest-marked objective, but the enemy redeployed far enough away. I think they got a 6 on the redeploy, so I failed with the charge with the Vanquishers and the Questors, because I wanted to take out that objective as well. And it's going to be 11 points, though, because I did kill the unit and take the objective off them. And into turn 2, you can see the Saurus unit is back at half strength near the slant, as they are allowed to do, and there's some shackles up here as well. There's also this horrible thing which allows this wizard to teleport to other manifestations, which is quite annoying. You can see the wizard has already disappeared. I think it's already teleported over here. So 15 points for the enemy, and they haven't done much, just taken objectives off me and holding a ley line. But I am not too disappointed about this, because I have got a path to get to Lord Croak now, and that is one of the juicy targets. So my Paladors could easily get down here, could charge into Lord Croak, shoot him, and then fight him. I could do enough damage. So you have to roll 3 dice, and then add that to how much damage he's taken. And I think if it's 20 or more, he dies. So if you're doing like 10 damage to him, which Paladors are definitely capable of doing, across 3 phases potentially, then that's a good chance of killing him. But even if you're only doing like 7 damage, he's still in serious danger. But there's a chance you just don't do anything to him. If you don't roll those 3 dice successfully, he lives, gets back to full health, and you've done nothing. So that's why I think Paladors are maybe a decent one for that, because if I get them in here, damage Croak, I can potentially power through using the Sauruses to get away, which is risky because it means another unit gets to fight me. Okay, so my turn 2. The Questors move up onto the objective. The Vanquishers do as well. The Paladors do go in on Croak. And hold on. Do they go in on Croak yet? Yes, they do. So they went into Croak. Tornus the Redeemed went to the Engine of the Gods and killed that. I put a lot of shooting into the Engine of the Gods to soften it up first, because I couldn't get my shooting into range of Lord Croak necessarily, because there are things screening him out. I did 11 wounds to him. There he is, there's his little face. But I needed to roll a 9 on 3 dice, and I only rolled a 7. So he lives and goes back to full health. But as you can see, I didn't suffer too much for it. I lost a couple of Paladors, but I think it was worth the risk to try and bring him down. I did kill the Engine of the Gods. I am holding a ley line, and my long strikes are in a safe position. I used them to mostly bring down the Engine of the Gods, and they're near the teleporter, which they can go through as well. The prosecutors are still in reserve. I've got a big bundle here, So I think positionally it's looking good. It just would have been nice to get that dice roll off and kill Croak. But it's still looking okay, I think. 10 points. Enemy Heath get the first go at round 3. And, oh yes, so I actually got the double here. But, well, I won the roll off. And I was going to take the double. And I rolled a 6 on the priority. My opponent has a reroll from having more drops and decided that me having a double here would be absolutely horrific, and I agree entirely. I think if I get the double here, I crash in and just murder pretty much everything here, because you can't defend Croak from shooting, you can't get him into obscuring, so I think there's a good chance that I would just wipe out a lot of this stuff, even though some of it's obscured. I think I would get enough into Croak, my shooting would be able to get into range of him, I would be able to get my strong fighting units in here, and I think it would be a very bad time for the Seraphon. So my opponent decided to re-roll, trying to get a 6, and managed to get a 6 on the re-roll. So, big moment there. So the Seraphon get the turn, so we've got some more manifestations going up again. We've got some Croak missiles being flung out, but not enough to kill my units, thankfully. The Croxagore and the Raptidons and the, what are the little unit there called? The Sunblood Pack, they're all going after my 2 big fighting infantry units, which I don't mind so much. I think that's going to be a good fight. The Questors have got a ward save on this objective. The Vanquishers are going to have extra attacks if they target the cavalry there, because they've got 5 at least in that unit. Long strikes, with a bit of covering fire, are able to take down a Croxagore, which helps turn it slightly in my favour as well. Sauruses are going for Tornus the Redeemed and the Paladors. Croak has just moved up into position for his shenanigans. Manifestations getting in there as well. These guys sneaking around the back. So everybody splats into my infantry wall there. I all out defense the Questors to try and keep them alive. And 3 of them are hanging in there. You can see I'm using this dice to show that I still have my teleport available when I remember to put it there. The Croxagores also have treasure as well, so they're quite a juicy target if I can start working on them. Now that they're out of obscuring, my opponent decided he needed to emerge this turn and actually fight, rather than just sitting there and letting me have the ley line for the entire game, which is a valid concern. The Sauruses still fighting Tornus, who heals himself, so he's got 5 wounds left now instead of 2. And my opponent scores only 6 points with that turn. Turn 3 for me. So, let's look what I'm going to do here. I'm going to try and put everything into potentially this little bundle. I could do that to try and kill off all of this area, because you can see the enemy didn't chew through my units too much. The Croxagore are still the main threat, so I can put a lot of shooting into them. And that's what I do. So the long strikes move up, shoot the Croxagore. My infantry are now winning this battle because of that shooting support, and everyone else just converged in the middle to defeat those Sauruses. There is one left though who could be a big problem. If I get the double turn, then he's going to prevent my units from potentially getting away and charging something else, apart from the Paladors. So I have to shoot him down and then charge from this position if I get the double turn now. You can see the Knight Judicator is here. He was joining in with some shooting as well. So we've killed a lot of lizards. Now many of them will come back at half strength, but I'm building up a good lead just with having all these objectives, constantly having the ley line, killing the Croxagore who are carrying treasure as well. So a 15-point turn, so that's very good for me. And if the enemy get the next turn, potentially Croak Magic Missile could do some good stuff down here. But the fact that Tornus the Redeemed and the Prosecutors, one of them could use an ability ignore, so Tornus could ignore one of the magic missiles potentially. He's got a ward save, so maybe not as devastating. And a weird photo there. I get the double turn. Wow, wow, wow. So that's not going to be very good for the enemy. That was a wow, wow, wow from the Seraphon perspective, by the way, because I think Croak is in deep trouble. The Questors are left alone to fend off the Sunblood Pack, the long strikes, and I have to actually shoot a couple of units, put some of my attacks into the Saurus to finish him off, so that Tornus the Redeemed and the Prosecutors are then able to get away and do other things in the shooting phase and the charge phase potentially. The long strikes, Paladors, the Prosecutors, everyone gets into Croak, and he does Croak. So I actually did less damage than last time, but I managed to roll higher on the 3 dice this time. So Croak is dead. So that gets rid of a lot of the manifestations as well, and it's looking like a mopping up operation now, because I've just got too big of a lead. And there was the roll to get rid of Croak this time. Much better. So 10-point turn because I had the double, so I couldn't do my tactics, but still, Croak is gone. Into the enemy turn, Sauruses into the Prosecutors, a fresh purple sun hatched by the Slan, and just trying to kick me off this objective basically. And they do, but it's not going to be enough to get that many points, only 3, and then I get first crack at round 5. I teleport my long strikes up here and shoot down the Slan that was hiding over there. Not Croak, but the other one. This Slan was hiding up in the corner. Long strikes pop up over there with the Prosecutors, shoot him to death. He's carrying treasure, so we'll have some of that. The treasure that was on, I believe the other one was it on Croak, the other one? I think that one may have got deleted when I took the double. Or it may have been one that I already scored or already had in the bank ready to score that was deleted. I can't remember. The Croxigor, when it was a unit of 6, definitely had one. And the Slan had one. I can't remember who had the other one though. I just get my units into a position to encircle those Sauruses, get in and kill them. Scoring loads of points. 20-point turn. And my opponent only manages to score 3 in the last round. And we were just talking through the last couple of things that would have happened, and I was happy to say that because I would kill this unit in my turn. We just said that would happen because we're running out of time, so it's the most likely outcome. And then I was happy to say that my opponent would come in with the Croxigor. I would redeploy Tornus the Redeemed away, and he would get in there and take this objective off me by killing 2 Paladors. I think that's more than fair from both of our perspectives to score that. So got some extra points for the Seraphon in the final turn there. And obviously, very successful game for the Stormcast, despite having that one turn of committing to going after Croak and not killing him. And it is 66 points to 37. So if we look at the final leaderboard, I've got 2 wins, 2 losses, and a draw. And I think one of those losses against the Nurgle, I think I could have played it a bit better at the end. And I think I was in a good position to win that one. The draw against the Sylvaneth, I think I was in a good position in that game, but I don't know if it was necessarily a mistake that I made that took it away from me there. I think it was, I had a couple of bad rounds of shooting in the one against the Bone Reapers in that loss. So overall, I'm pretty pleased with how this list did. I'd probably try it or something similar again if I get to another event before the new General's Handbook is out that totally changes everything. And they could redo all the points as well, so some of this stuff might not be as competitive anymore. But I finished 13th out of 26, so very mid-table. But I ended up with plus 40 on victory points, which is pretty good. Looking at some of the players who finished above me, finished with like negative 23. So, and there's someone that finished in the top 7 with only plus 22. So I didn't lose by big margins, and I did win by decent margins. So quite happy with this. Did anyone not pull their weight? Did the Vanquishers pull their weight? They actually did a pretty good job fighting. They're not that expensive. And against certain lists, maybe some of the lists I didn't face, some of the really massed, spammed, rubbish troops, maybe they would have been great in those matchups, but we didn't see a lot of that. The Knight Judicator, obviously I forgot to bring him down in one game, so can't blame him for that. I think his dice rolls are quite poor throughout though. I didn't do that much damage with the Knight Judicator. So, but when you add him to the long strikes, I think he's more effective, using him to just do a little bit of extra damage compared to what they're doing on their own. Long strikes are obviously always good. Palador's always good. Tornus the Redeemed, I think, did a really good job. The Priest is obviously must-have. And all in all, pretty satisfied with how the games went. Let me know if you have run a similar list to this, if you think there's anything that would fit in better than one of the units I chose. Whether you would like to have a wizard in your list, because obviously I don't have one, so there were a lot of points in the game where I was just having to let spells happen. I couldn't do anything about them. Even though there were places of power, my heroes weren't always necessarily close to those places of power. Is there too much shooting if obscuring is going to be such a big deal in the meta? And what do we think about the reveals for the General's Handbook, and how is that going to affect the kind of lists that I run? Apparently Yndrasta is going to be the new hotness, people are saying, because of the rage mechanics, which seems to be you can give additional attacks to a specific unit. So obviously if Yndrasta is fighting a monster, she only has a very limited number of attacks with the weapon that can do 8 damage to a monster. But if you can give her more attacks with that, suddenly Mega Gargants are just going to be disappearing, potentially. So, well, as if people are going to run Mega Gargants, you don't see them very often. But other big monsters, she could be the way to go in the era of rage that's being ushered in. So that's potentially very exciting to give her some good use on the table. And she's not exactly been bad during this season. I think she's always just been slightly expensive, because you want her for jobs that other people also do, like Tornus the Redeemed or Bastion are cheaper and also unlock everything, and just as survivable as she is. And they do other tasks as well, like Bastion gives out the free all-out attack. Tornus is fast, and he puts the -1 to hit on enemies or heals his own troops. That's quite good. Dark says 3 extra attacks at the end of the turn. People speculate that centerpieces might be more prominent. I certainly want to see more Arcane, Marathi, and so on. Yes, and that's why I think Yndrasta will be even better, because people are going to be bringing units that can take advantage of that 3 extra attacks at the end of the turn thing. So it's going to be more likely that she's going to have a juicy target on the table for her very high damage attacks. What I would say though, because of the timing of the extra attacks, you do have to find a way for her to not die before then, if you want to get those attacks in. So you do still have to be careful with that, because the other units that people are going to be bringing to take advantage of those attacks are usually going to be having more than 8 wounds. So you might have to look at ways to keep her alive if you want to get those attacks in the first place. That would be something to consider, because there are other units that are a bit more survivable. We're looking at the likes of, I think Karazai maybe has a higher number of attacks that aren't necessarily as damaging. Let me just have a quick look at Karazai and the damage output on his melee weapons. So he's got some with damage 4. So obviously there's a candidate, because that's a potential extra 12 damage you can do to something. But definitely pales in comparison to the output you could get with Yndrasta against a monster with her weapon. Because one of the ways they limit the massive output of certain weapons, if they have high damage, is they just give you few attacks with them. So a way to get extra attacks with something, just blanket extra attacks with anything, is a potentially big deal for some of those units that have been balanced by giving them a small number of attacks. Dark says, Scarbrand is so scary, flat 8 damage. Yes, I would expect to see lots of Scarbrand around. Is that the highest flat damage in the whole game without any requirements? So it doesn't need to be against a certain unit type. Is Scarbrand the highest damage? Is there anything else that does 8? He only gets 2, now he can get 3 more. Yeah, and Scarbrand is probably more likely to survive to the end of the turn to use it than Yndrasta as well. So he could be good. There's some things like Mega Gargants that do high damage on a small number of attacks. Some of the Mega Gargants are better at that than others. Anyway, I think it's time to wrap this one up. So let's bring up the old thumbnail again. And when is the next event? I've got Old World in a couple of weeks, I think. So I'm probably going to be taking my Warriors of Chaos there with some new stuff and new unit compositions, perhaps. Age of Sigmar, there is definitely one that I've signed up for in the next month or so, I think. I remember adding one to the calendar recently, and I'll probably try and get some regular games in at some point as well. I don't know whether it's going to be before or after the GHB pops up, so that could change things drastically. So when it does pop up, if you're watching this after that fact, then let me know what you want to see as well based on that book, what you think is going to be very strong. Because we only know certain leaks so far, we haven't got all the context, we haven't got new point values and all that good stuff that we normally have. So, if you enjoy this content, why not like the video? Why not subscribe if for some weird reason you haven't already? If you want to have your feed occasionally sprinkled with these delightful tournament reports from any game system that I'm playing, which at the moment is mostly Age of Sigmar and the Old World, but not necessarily always those two game systems. And if you think this is such good content that it's like a lighthouse, a beacon guiding you towards the shores in the foggy seas that you've been navigating, trying to find some kind of hobby fulfillment, and I've guided you onto those shores where you're finding just all kinds of enlightenment and entertainment and education, then why not pledge your entire life savings to the Patreon or PayPal links down there as well, which pays for more tournament tickets, which means I play in more tournaments, which means more tournament reports, which means even a brighter beacon is shone to guide you away from the darkness and into the light. Don't forget to check out all the links down there in the description as well. There's some social media shenanigans, Facebook and Twitter and all that usual stuff. And other than that, I think, other than thanks for tuning in, all that remains to be said is good night out there, whatever you are.